Hi, it's the boss here again, back with a bang. Here to give you the skinny on Joe Morello, alias Vito Morello, alias Pedro Morello. He was known as the Clutching Hand due to having one arm and was the original Joe the Boss. He left Sicily after being charged for a rub-out, and he arrived in New York in 1892 with his half-brothers. He moved from New York to Louisiana to Texas, then back to New York in 1897. His power was first indicated in July 1902, when he was reported to have approved the murder of Brooklyn mafioso Giuseppe Catania. Catania liked to drink and talk too much when drunk. His mutilated corpse was eventually discovered dumped in Brooklyn in a similar fashion to the Barrel murder. Morello was arrested in April 1903 in connection with the New York Barrel murder. The police discovered correspondence at his home at 218 Christie Street linking him to Santo Calamia and others in New Orleans. The Secret Service discovered that Italian counterfeiters in New Orleans had begun to sell their fake currency to bolster Morello's defense fund. Following his release from the Barrel murder trial, Morello was tracked in New Orleans with the Secret Service suspecting him of transporting counterfeit plates from New York. In 1906, Morello was suspected of being involved with the murder of Andrea Fondi, a Sicilian who had recently arrived in New York. The police charged Ignazio Milone with the murder, but the actual murderer was later reported to be Morello's father-in-law, Gioacchino Lima. He was released from Atlanta Penitentiary in 1920. Morello had lost close family to the gang feuds during his incarceration, including his half-brother Nicola and his son Calogero. On August 15, 1930, Mr. Vito Genovese woke up and showered in his New York Harlem apartment, got changed, kissed his children goodbye, and left. They were unaware he was carrying double revolvers in his undercoat. He met up with Lucky Luciano and Joe the Boss and was patted on the shoulder and sent off on his task for the day. He then got into his car and drove down the block to 350 to East 116th Street in East Harlem, New York. He parked his heavily armored car next to a car with the number plate listed as Morello Terranova. He lit his cigar and patiently waited and waited and waited. Inside the property Genovese was watching was sitting Joe Morello and Joseph Pirano and a man known as Pilario. They discussed how Joseph Pirano would be leaving for Sicily in the morning to expand operations for Joe to boss Masseria. A knife was on the sofa and no gun was present as they feared the FBI entering. However, there was a much darker and scarier presence outside watching quietly. The room was filled with smoke and smelled of bootleg beer. Suddenly, a knock at the door. As shown in this article from the time, the shooting occurred in his office, which was barely furnished. It says there were the gunmen, and my theory is the other gunman was a man called Frank Costello who was close with Charlie Luciano. However, I could be wrong. 15 gunshots were fired, and it is said Morello was killed instantly as he was the main target, and his picture was in the papers, making him easily identifiable. As Genovese ran out, a book he took from the corpse of Morello dropped and was found by a young man. This book listed 50 people with amounts next to names, which is of course a loan shark book. Genovese leapt into his vehicle and sped off in a hail of bullets, shooting anyone in his way. Something missed out was that Joseph Pirano, who was scheduled to leave for Italy in the morning, was gunned down in the flurry of revolver bullets aimed at Morello. The other victim, Polania, was shot too, but managed to leap out of a second-floor window onto the ground floor, where he was picked up and taken to hospital. Here he gave a detailed version of events before his passing shortly. Genovese took over his interest in Harlem and is known prospered to later become the boss of a family that still bears his name. Morello was the original boss, the OG mafia don back in a time where all famous mafiosi were traveling to America as babies with their families. Morello currently rests at Calvary Cemetery, Woodside, Queens County, New York, USA. This was the skinny of the time Vito Genovese whacked the original Don Giuseppe Morello. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure you whack that thumbs up button and rub out that subscribe button too. Remember, a Don never wears shorts.